Hi, welcome to another episode of Look Ma No Hands. My name is Linda, and this is a little podcast, I guess you call, um, where I talk about all things crochet and yarn. I talk about what I'm reading, what I'm watching. Sometimes I do a segment that I call Fancy Footwork, in which I show how I do tasks of daily living using my feet since I was born without arms. This week I'm not wearing anything crocheted. I do have a poncho that I plan on wearing someday soon, but it's still a little too warm for me to start wearing some of my more wintry type of ponchos. But maybe next week I'll be wearing it because we're predicted to be getting some snow Sunday into Monday. So we'll see what that prediction comes to be. I feel it's a little too early in the season for snow, but I mean, the weather's gonna do what the weather's gonna do, right? In terms of what I'm stitching this week, I'm continuing to work on the Granny Square project that I'm kind of designing as I go. It's a project that I will be talking about in great detail in the not too distant future. It's kind of a mashup of a couple of ideas that things that I like to kind of dabble in here and there. So yeah, it'll be a very large project, a very exciting project. Right now I'm just working on the basic granny squares, and then the assembly is where things are going to really get exciting. So yeah, I've been knocking around some ideas of how I want to finish the border around the blanket when I'm all done with it. I'm using lots of bright, exciting colors, so just trying to think of how I want to incorporate the colors in the finishing kind of touches on the blanket. So yeah, you guys will have kind of a cool little concept coming down the pipeline. And that's pretty much all I've been working on. Because it is a blanket project, it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks for me to finish it. Probably through the end of this year, and maybe even a little bit into next year. I think I mentioned last week that it seems that my MO is to kind of take on a large blanket project at the end of the year. Last year, I think I finished out the year with the circle to a square granny project that I did using some yarns that I received in kind of like a kit form. I would consider them kind of like bonbon sized skeins of yarn that my husband and my son had purchased for me at one point, I think for my birthday. So I used those bonbons to make the circle part, and then I had some cream colored yarn that I wanted to use up as I was kind of stash busting. So yeah, I have that blanket. I'll see if I can find a picture of it to post in this video, but it turned out really nice. I liked it. So now this project is going to be kind of similar to that, and yeah, not circle to square, but just the big granny square project. I'm going to have to make, I think, 81 squares, so it's quite the undertaking, and it'll probably end up being big enough for my queen-sized bed, so there's that. Reading this week, I read 3 books, well, audiobooks, so I guess you could say listened. Lauryn Harper Falls Apart by Shauna Robinson. It was a very fall-themed book. I really liked it. It was pretty much on brand for Shauna Robinson. I really like her writing style, the way she develops her characters. Lauryn Harper is kind of like a 30-something businesswoman. She works kind of like in the PR department at a very large company that has less than ethical practices. So she's oftentimes forced to kind of put a spin on things that happen in the company that she works for. Lauryn Harper is a character who is deaf in one ear, and that plays a big part in kind of the downfall of poor Lauryn. She's in the elevator with her boss, and or not, I don't know if it was necessarily her boss, but like one of the higher ups in the company, where he asks her about something that he had overheard that she had said, and she didn't understand what he said because of her hearing loss, and she just kind of nods along like, yeah, yeah. And it turns out what she said, or what he kind of overheard that she had said, was kind of threatening to one of the kind of upper management, like the CEO or COO, something to that effect. And so her boss is forced to demote her, I guess you could say, and they send her off to one of the satellite offices where they send kind of all their undesirables, people that have made big mistakes in the company, people that have overheard things that maybe they shouldn't have overheard. And that office kind of embraces the nickname or the idea of being kind of like the undesirables. They're happy working in that office because they're kind of just left to their own devices. They're not really looked to do too much for the company. It's kind of like they're put there because they would be a danger to the company if they were just outright fired. So the company kind of just goes along to get along. They get their paycheck. They don't really have a lot of responsibilities, so it is what it is. It turns out that the satellite office is located in Lauryn's hometown. She's not thrilled about returning there because she had a falling out with her childhood best friend, and through the story they are kind of forced to work together on the project to revive the town's fall festival. And a lot of like antics and just crazy things kind of surround the concept of reviving the fall festival. And they have to kind of work through their issues that they have with one another in terms of the old feelings that kind of were the downfall of their relationship in their youth. As most novels, kind of go, things get resolved in the end, and the fall festival goes off without much of a hitch. But there's a lot of like crazy fun things that happen along the way of getting the fall festival off the ground. It was a really fun novel. There were some really like silly moments in it. There's a lot of like quirky characters in the story. Like I said, the characters are just really fun in Shauna Robinson's novels. So if you're looking for just kind of like a feel good kind of story, just, an easy read, this is definitely falling into that category. Just like a contemporary novel. Like there's not really a lot of romance in it. It's just a fun story. It kind of reads like a Hallmark movie. Like it just has all of those elements of like, the small town living and the quirky characters and just a lot of fun, crazy stuff in this novel. So highly recommend this one. This was definitely at the top of my list of books that I've read this year. So yeah. And then I read The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore. It's part of the Dream Harbor series, the Cinnamon Bun Bookshop. I've read several of them. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. So, yeah, this is right along the the lines of those other novels. A lot of the characters from the previous novels are in this one, and it's, again, like another fun book that I read. This is more along lines of a romance. There's some spiciness in it. The main character decides to buy kind of like a dilapidated Christmas tree farm. Excuse me. And she thinks this is going to be like kind of her foray into like full-fledged adulthood and showing that she's responsible, and she finds that it's yet another one of her bad decisions because nothing is going right. Like, there's just so many problems with the farm. She thought it was going to be like her way of like exerting her independence and being like this, strong, independent woman. And she's finding that it's not so easy to do that, especially when her definition of being an independent woman is not letting anybody into her life. And she's finding that doing that is making the success of her farm very difficult. So the townspeople really want to like rally behind her and help her out, but she's pretty much alienated herself away from like all of the people of Dream Harbor. And they send in someone who's not like a full-fledged resident of Dream Harbor. The brother to one of the main residents of Dream Harbor kind of goes in to try and save the day, and of course our main character is not having any of it because it's a man, and she's like just not feeling the vibe. She recognizes him as being very attractive and just like your stereotypical like knight in shining armor type, and she's having none of it. But it's kind of one of those things that she just doesn't understand, like, what is the draw to him? Like, she can't resist this man. And he pretty much is relentless in trying to help her out. He sees that like she has a good heart. The thing that he notices most about her is her love of animals. He has 3 dogs that he's walking across her property with, and she's much friendlier towards the dogs than she is to him. And he thinks like she can't be all bad if she wants to make nice with my dogs. So that's kind of like a bonding point for them. Ultimately, he's able to help her out despite all of her resistance. She allows him to do little things here and there around the farm. There is kind of like a treasure hunt element to the story because supposedly the family that she bought the farm from kind of left hints of things were left on the property that were valuable. They were kind of hidden on the property because the previous property owner did not want his nephew, I believe, to get a hold of the things that he felt were most valuable. So he hid them on the property. She doesn't believe any of the craziness that the townspeople are insisting is part of the quirkiness of the farm. And so that's kind of a fun and interesting little bit to the Dream Harbor story here. I feel like every Dream Harbor story has like a funny, quirky little thing. Like one of them, there was like a ghost story in it. And so yeah, this is just kind of like a fun little element of like trying to discover the hidden treasure on the property, and the disbelief of like, I'm sure it's just like a made up story, blah, blah, blah. Like they, the townspeople fully believe, they're like 100% behind the treasure hunt story, and the 2 kind of main characters are not fully on board with that idea. They're like, it's a bunch of just like shenanigans that the townspeople have come up with. So yeah, again, this was a fun little like fluff novel. If you're not into like romance type stories, this one is not for you. But um, I do love a good romance novel, or even a crappy romance novel. This is somewhere in between. It wasn't like the best novel I've ever read, but it also wasn't one of the worst. So yeah, just a very lighthearted little holiday type story. So if you're into romance novels, this one might be one you'd like to pick up. Again, like I said, it's part of that Dream Harbor series by Laurie Gilmore. I plan on continuing to read the rest of them just because I've gone this far. Why not keep going? So yeah. And then the last book that I read this week is called The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins. The reviews on it were kind of hearkening or like aligning her with like Shirley Jackson and some other like renowned authors. This novel is kind of like a thriller mystery type of novel. I disagree with those assessments. I'm not sure what it was about this book, but I had a really hard time getting into it and kind of following the storyline. The synopsis sounded interesting in terms of like there's this like artist person that dies, and they had kind of promised a bunch of their artworks to a museum. The museum didn't receive all of the artworks that were promised, but one of the ones that they did receive was kind of like a found objects sculpture that upon examination, it appeared that one of the found objects in the sculpture was a human rib. And so, huge controversy with that piece of artwork because they were not able to then display the artwork because of that human remains element in it. And then they had to try and like figure out like where did that rib come from, like how did, like, yeah. So there's a lot of mystery involved in that. The artist character, their death was due to cancer and just some complications that came surrounding that diagnosis. Their kind of live-in companion / caregiver person adds a good mystery element of mystery to the whole thing. A lot of the characters were quite complicated. So I mean, I guess maybe that's where they're trying to draw this comparison to Shirley Jackson, and that the characters, like the different connections between characters and things like that, were very complicated. And I don't know, I just, maybe because of that comparison, I was expecting more out of the novel, and yeah, it kind of fell flat for me. I listened to the entire thing just because I wanted to know, like, the end of the story, like, where did that bone come from? You do end up finding out how that all happened and everything, but it was kind of anticlimactic. Like, I just couldn't get into it, so I don't know. Like I said, maybe it was just me, but I didn't care for this book. I know, not a glowing review, but if you're into like thrillers and murder mysteries and things like that, then maybe this would be one for you. But in terms of my enjoyment, I just, yeah, it just didn't hit the mark for me. So kind of a shame to end the book reviews on such a sour note, but it is what it is. Um, I've got quite a few books on my list coming up for next week, so hopefully there'll be a few more interesting and exciting reads on next week's episode. But for this week, yeah, Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins was just kind of what I'm watching this week is pretty much all the same things that I was watching last week. Got to do my daily watch of General Hospital. The final episode of the week this week had an interesting character kind of come in, and throughout the entire episode, Tim and I were both like, who is that and what are they doing? They're so creepy. And then just the way they kind of ended the exchange with that character. Whew. Obviously there's going to be a lot there as I scroll through social media and see like things coming up. It's just very strange. But I'll be interested to see how that particular character develops, and if they end up being as nefarious as they seem. Right now they're pretty creepy. So yeah. We've been watching Dancing with the Stars. Some of our favorites are still in the running, but slowly things are dwindling, and as much as we're enjoying Andy's participation in the show, we kind of feel like he's just not at the same level as a lot of the other dancers, and some dancers that have been sent home should have been allowed to stay beyond where they have, considering the kind of plateau that Andy has hit. We don't really feel that his skills are leveling up as nicely as some of the others, so kind of disappointed with the way that's going, but I mean, it is what it is, right? Shifting Gears was good again this week. I really enjoy watching that show. The comedy in there is really good, and just the relationship of all the characters amongst each other. I like how they are kind of showing all the dimensions of Tim Allen's character. They kind of portray him as like, you know, your typical boomer of like just thinking he knows everything, and how that can kind of make him come off as kind of a jerk. But this past week, the storyline kind of shows his more serious side and like just his more caring side. So yeah, it's a good episode this week. I really enjoyed it. Let's see. Oh, Golden Bachelor. Since we don't have a dog in the race anymore, all the people that we kind of were cheering for are gone. So now we're just watching to see how things play out. Like, we're not super excited about it anymore. It's just, it kind of is what it is at this point. Yeah, I kind of, in a way, hope that neither of the women say yes to him, because it's just kind of like, it's just not that interesting anymore. So that's my hot take on it. Watched 911 this week, and was very intrigued by it, with the cultural element of like Dia de los Muertos that they put into it, and Eddie kind of struggling with his faith in this week's episode. And I just really like how they kind of showed how that struggle can happen, like things kind of panning out for him in his young adult life, things happening where he felt like God had abandoned him, and kind of questioning like, where is God when bad things are happening? And his aunt, well, I guess his great aunt, kind of helping him to understand that where you see love, that is where God is. And yeah, it was just kind of a nice part of the storyline in there. I like sometimes when the dramas like that can get kind of deep and discuss topics that can be difficult to address in like a pop culture type of program. It just, yeah, I liked how they handled that. And in some avenues of the show, they kind of went a little bit lighthearted with it, but then kind of taking it into that more serious realm with Eddie and Christopher and like their cultural element. That was very interesting to me, partly because part of my culture is the Mexican culture, and all of those nuances of that were interesting to me, because being raised here in the United States, I didn't really have a lot of experience in that realm. My parents kind of kept things a little more to like the European celebrations of things. So when I get a chance to experience through media the other side of my culture, it's kind of exciting. So it was fun to see that representation in the kind of mainstream media. And then we watched 911 Nashville, which I really enjoy so far. The character development that's happening with the character of Blue, being that he's kind of about the same age as Tim. It's interesting to kind of see like how he's struggling with like entering into young adulthood and like trying to be like a real grown-up and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just interesting. And then just the dynamics of like he's finding out like who his father is. And yeah, it's an interesting show. I'm kind of excited to see the direction in which they take all of these characters. It's interesting to see like the sibling relationship developing between the two young men. You can definitely see like the drama and the push and pull of them kind of coming to terms with the fact that like all of a sudden they have brothers, and like, yeah, it's a lot to handle. So definitely some great writing when it comes to that character development. So yeah, Grey's Anatomy this week was very interesting, seeing the development of some of the young characters there, the residents and things like that. I really like the character of Simone. She's great. Dr. Kwan, that's another great character. So it's being like a long time viewer of the show and seeing like the evolution of the characters that have been around since the beginning, and then when they introduce new characters every season, like, it's interesting to see that evolution and see how they can kind of keep some of the old characters and show like their progress in their career. And yeah, it's just a very interesting thing to watch in terms of like the professionalism and things like that, of like how a doctor's career would kind of like evolve, and how like the new doctors come on board at the hospital, and just like the hospital itself is almost like a character in the story. So yeah, it's just interesting from like an artist perspective of thinking about the show, not just thinking about like the actors and the, you know, the people that you see on screen every week, but just all of the players that come into creating a show like that. I just really like watching that show since it's been on like so long, and I feel like I've grown up with the characters because they were kind of like, we're all kind of like the same age, and like just thinking about like the evolution of like your professional career and things like that. It's kind of interesting to watch that evolution take place. So yeah, on Hulu we're still watching Who's the Boss and Golden Girls. Kind of exciting that they're going to be celebrating like the 40th anniversary of the Golden Girls in the coming weeks here on ABC. I saw that they're doing like a special to honor the Golden Girls, so that'll be exciting. I can't wait to see that, to see like all the other actors and people talking about like the impact that that show had on society and American culture and things like that. It's just kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Continuing to watch the Food Network Holiday Baking Championship. again, I will say it, I love watching competition shows like that. Just seeing the artistry and like what each of the bakers brings to the table is so satisfying. And then seeing like the concept of the show of like Team Naughty and Team Nice, and like how um, they've incorporated the team element, but also then like there's the individual competition. So like each person that's participating is competing for their own spot in the show, but then how the teams have to kind of come together to make sure that they can extend their longevity individually is kind of cool. So yeah, it was a good episode this week of seeing like how they're developing the villain and like all of that crazy stuff. Like it's fun. It's interesting because it's not like a sitcom or a drama, but you can kind of see how in like post-production they can kind of edit and create characters, so to speak, amongst the competitors, and kind of like edit the program to make you like or dislike certain players in the game. So yeah, that was interesting this week to kind of see, like, within the household here, we kind of discuss like what we see happening in terms of like post-production and like how things get edited to look a certain way. So we love having those discussions. On Netflix this week we watched Sister Act and Sister Act 2, two of my favorite movies growing up. Those movies came out when I was like junior high school age, so very nostalgic watching those. I was in the choir in like freshman, sophomore year of high school, and since those movies were like super popular at that time, the choir teacher allowed us to perform some of the songs as they were presented in that movie, or in those movies. So that was kind of fun, thinking about that time in my life and like those songs and like how much fun we had in choir, performing those songs in high school. So yeah, that was fun to watch those. And then my mom and I have been watching on Netflix the show called My Life with the Walter Boys, and we watched the first season kind of separately, but then we would talk about it together. And she no longer has access to Netflix at her house, so now she comes over and we watch it together. So it's been fun. We've watched, I think, 2 episodes so far. Yeah, so I like kind of having that little bit of time just chilling with mom. We've been going to the gym together, so yeah, it's just fun to have that little bit of fun time with mom. A little story from our gym experience this week. I'll talk about it later in the episode, when I talk about like life stuff going on. But yeah, we've been having fun with that. And then on Amazon Prime Video, I should say, I've been watching, still slowly getting through The Summer I Turned Pretty. I've got 2 more episodes to go before I finish up the current season, and needless to say, I just love this show. I know my niece watches it, and she kind of like hate watches it. Like, she's like, there's just so much drama, and there is, and that's what I love about it, because like I've always said, I love drama on the screen, not in my real life. So I will watch all of the drama, I will read all of the romance novels, like, give me all of it, but just on the page or on the screen, that's it. So I'm loving the drama of things kind of falling apart for Belly. Sucks to be her, but I mean, like I said, I love the drama on the page, on the screen. So definitely like juicy details of things happening for that poor girl. But I mean, it is what it is, right? If you know, you know. So yeah, going back to talking about some life things, back to life as usual. Through the month of like August, September, a good portion of October, I kind of fell away from going to the gym like I had been for a while. I really enjoy that time. I'm the kind of person that feels like going to the gym is a great like mental health thing. When I get out on the stationary bike and just kind of ride, I feel like my brain kind of has like a moment to just kind of like decompress. When I'm really like in my feels, I tend to ride faster. So this week I've been on the bike, just kind of doing my thing, chilling, trying to listen to some good tunes while I'm out on the bike. Occasionally I'll watch something on Netflix if I remember to bring my headphones. So yeah, but getting back into weightlifting and doing the weight machines. Funny story this week was going into the gym. Our typical thing is, like I said, to go over to the cardio machines and ride the stationary bikes, but on this particular day there were no bikes available, so Mom and I decided to do some of the weight machines, and I was kind of helping her with one, and then I went and got on one myself, did a set on the leg press, and then took a break and was kind of talking with Mom to help her with the machine she was on. And a gentleman at the gym was offering to help me adjust the weight on the machine for myself. He was going to adjust the weight lighter, and I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't need your help. And then when I was done with the machine, I walked away, got on a different machine. He got on the same machine, did not adjust the weight. I think he was trying to see like, so like how heavy is that? Humble brag here, I guess you could say. I was doing 210 pounds. I want to have like strong muscles. It's just, I don't know, like a weirdness that I have, I guess. Part of it has to do with just like the doctor, when I was complaining about like certain aches and pains, my doctor recommended that I work to build the muscles that support the knees. So not that I'm obsessing about it, but I want to take that into consideration as I'm aging. Like, I don't want to have knee surgery and things like that, because when you have surgeries, then you have a bunch of other issues that you have to kind of deal with post-op, and just didn't want to have to think about that down the road. So started doing the weightlifting, and I really like it. So I like pushing my limits and seeing like how far I can go. That being said, the guy gets on the machine to see like how heavy was it, and he did one rep and then quit. So apparently his curiosity was satisfied. He was like, oh, okay. Like I said, I like lifting heavy. Being that I haven't been to the gym for a while, I had to kind of dial my weights back a little bit. I was far beyond 210 at one point. My goal is to try and max out the machine, so not trying to do it anytime soon. I'm giving myself like a year or so. I want to see if by the end of next calendar year I can max it out. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, like I said, I just go to the gym, do some cardio, do some weights, sometimes get in the pool, but it's something that I really enjoy. So it's a little tidbit of my life there. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. If you're new, thanks for stopping by. If you like what you've seen this week, consider subscribing. Hit that like button. For those of you that have come back time and again, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming in, dropping comments. I like to hear what you guys are up to. The little stories here and there that you all have shared are much appreciated. I really, like I said, feel like I'm making friends, kind of like when the internet first became a thing and there were like chat rooms and things like that. Yeah, it's just kind of a fun little exchange on here. So don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you next week.